My name is Mark Smits. I met Don Munson in 2021 and was immediately influenced by him. I've lived a long time and I've rarely met somebody who is so engaging, so generous, so patriotic. He had a huge influence on me and he's really going to be missed.
My name is Erin Munson and I am one of Don's grandchildren. And my favorite thing about my grandfather was the way he lit up a room and just how he connected with other people. It's a quality that I'm blessed to have received from him and something I'll always hold near and dear to my heart.
Hello, I'm Lieutenant Colonel Arthur Fowler. I've been in the MOWW since 2006. In 2010, I began writing a newsletter and began directing a youth leadership conference, which brought me in contact with Don Munson. And he was certainly a mentor for me. I learned a lot from him, and I relied on him heavily, and we became good friends. And I can't say anything more than good about the man, and I'm so honored to have been his friend.
My name is Michael Menifee. I'm a retired Lieutenant Colonel in the Marine Corps. I met Don 10 years ago, a little over 10 years ago, when I joined MOWW. When I became the commander of the chapter, Don was not only a mentor because he had been a chapter commander, but he was also became a dear friend. He was also the editor of the newsletter, and at that time and all the way to current, I'm still writing a monthly article, the national security article for the newsletter. And my feelings of Don are a deep loss, but he was an outstanding gentleman. I will tell you something humorous. I frequently teased Don about being in the Army and instead of the Marine Corps. And I told him that, you know, from the Marine Corps standpoint, we consider there's one service and everybody else is in the armed forces. But I will say that the Special Forces and Rangers are the elite of the Army, just like the SEALs are the elite of the Navy. And I had a great pleasure of working with all three groups when I was in the military on active duty. But anyway, Don said, well, you know, there's one reason that I didn't qualify to join the Marines. And I said, well, Don, what's that? And he said, well, Michael, and he kind of whispered, my parents were married. And I said, well, actually, Don, mine were too, but that's a great story. But we became dear friends over many years, and the last year or so, Don's been on the wane, and he will dearly be missed and sorely missed. He did so many things for MOWW, but he had such a distinguished military career. I don't know if others have mentioned this, but he had a Silver Star, he had 2 Bronze Stars, Distinguished Flying Cross, Air Medals. He had Defense Meritorious Service Medal, he had a Meritorious Service Medal. He had a whole bunch of medals from Vietnam and a Purple Heart, and he was just an outstanding gentleman, an outstanding officer, a great leader, and he will be missed. Another quick story about Don, he told me about Ranger School, and he and one of his Ranger buddies decided to swim across a lake right at the end of Ranger School. And it was about a half mile. It wasn't that long of a swim. The water was relatively comfortable, and so he and his buddy swam across the lake, and then one of the instructors met him at the end. He said, do you know why we told you not to swim across the lake? And he said, well, I thought you just wanted us to walk it a little bit more. And he said, and we were just kind of tired of walking. We needed a bath anyway, so that we took the lake. He said, well, it's good that the alligators didn't catch you because there are alligators in the lake, and we didn't want you to get eaten by the alligators. That's why we told you not to swim.
I've been asked to share some memories of my brother, Don. I'm his little sister, Ann Munson Ball now. Don was just a really special brother. I had two brothers, but Don seemed to be more interested in communicating with his little sister. And I just cherished it because he was always interested in what you were interested in. I think that's kind of one of the things that made him so special. But another thing that I really appreciated as I grew older into my late adolescence and teenage years and young adulthood, he was very generous with his gifts. And Christmas holidays, or if he was just showing up to visit, he'd bring you some sort of a lovely gift. When I was little, he gave me my first fur coat. I still have it. That was when I was about 14. I'm about to turn 80. I still have it. It was that precious to me. He gave me things like nutcrackers, the big military-looking or different kind of soldiers and what have you, nutcrackers from Germany. Things from all over the world he would send to me as a gift. And but my favorite one were Peanuts characters. I have no idea where he got them. I've never seen them anywhere in catalogs or anything. They were about this tall, and there was a set of 6 of them, and I put them at the top of my bed. So kind of every night when I go to sleep, I could think of my brother and wonder where he was. But here was this token of his love for his little sister. I'm sure Charlie Brown and the whole gang, including Schroeder with his piano. It was magical for a little girl to have a brother like Don.
Hi, I'm Terry Keith Brown. I'm Don Munson's son, his stepson. He married my mother in 1991, and I've been with him ever since. So for the last, for 35 years. Of course, I met him in 1984. So we've been together a while. I was not born a Munson, but Dad never made me feel less for that. I was always just his son, and I loved him. Dad was my hero. I never met anybody like him before in my life, and I've not met anybody like him since. Anything that's good in me, my gregariousness, my love of adventure, my love of travel, these things came from him. He made me who I am today, and I am better for knowing him, for loving him, and being loved by him. A lot of people knew him. Obviously, he's a great leader. He knew he was a great person, but I knew him as a great dad. I knew the father side, but I also knew the trickster and the little imp that he could be, because we used to play tricks on each other all the time. When I lived with my parents for a while, we used to have who could steal the other's treats. He would keep his bucket of candy downstairs, and I would keep mine upstairs. And I would come upstairs and half of it was missing. So that night I would go down and steal that half back and forth. And we just had this constant good-natured war of the treats to see who could steal them the most. He was a great guy. I loved him dearly. My life will be worse without him, but I carry parts of him with me and will forever because that's who he was. That's who he was to me. I don't know what to say. I loved him. I will always love him. And having lost him now will be having lost a part of myself.
I'm Megan Munson. I am Don's oldest granddaughter. He's Double D to me. And my Double D taught me just such a love of people. He was friends with everyone he met, no matter where we were. We'd be on the other side of the planet, and he would be making friends with people. He was just so courageous and taught me so much about how I want to live my life, how I want to raise my family, and I truly hope to honor him in how I spend the rest of my life. I love you, Double D.
Hi, my name is Bill Munson. I'm the older brother of Don Munson. known as Lieutenant Colonel Don Black Munson, U.S. Army. I'll just tell you a short story from our past. I'll have to go way, way back. Let's make Don about 4, and I guess that would put me at about 6 years old, which would put us in the early years of World War II. And at that time when we were in school and everything, we were always encouraged to help provide for our troops that are overseas. And one way we could do that was by making a victory garden. Well, we were 2 enterprising young little tots, and so we made a little pact. Well, let's us make a victory garden so we can help our troops overseas. Well, the idea of a victory garden was to grow fresh vegetables so we would have fresh food to eat here in the States, so that the other fresh produce and that could go to our troops overseas. Well, we went out in the yard, out in our front yard, and cut out a patch to make our little victory garden. And to encourage you to make a victory garden, the people that provided that service and encouraged people to do it made a little ditty. And they encouraged the people that had a victory garden to sing their little song while they were making their garden to get the vegetables to feed the family back at home. So I'll give you a version of that. Ho, 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 you row through the summer heat. Corn and potatoes and rice and tomatoes are mighty good to eat. That was our ditty.
Hi, I'm Mark Munson. I'm Don Munson's son. I wanted to recount 2 stories he told me that have kind of stuck with me over time, and I don't think he actually even shared them with many people, so I thought it'd be interesting to share here. When he graduated from Tulane, he received a distinguished military graduate award, which allowed him to choose which branch of the Army to join. And I remember him saying that he immediately wanted to join the infantry. And the reason was, that's the guys who do the fighting. And that's what he was joining the Army for. So he was gung-ho from the beginning and loved his career in the Army. But one of the things he was most proud of is when he commanded his first unit in Vietnam, in the 1st Cav unit he was extremely proud of. He said he didn't imagine this was possible, but the thing that made him most proud was that he didn't lose a single soldier under his command. And there's no battlefield glory or anything that made him more proud than the fact that he didn't lose a single one of his soldiers. The other one is a little interesting, and he didn't even tell me this story until a couple years ago. But he was commanding a unit that came across one of the holes where the Viet Cong would hide in the tunnels. And once they came across one of the openings, he sent one of his guys in there with a pistol and a flashlight to go explore down there and find what he could. And about 30 seconds later, he heard a gunshot from in the tunnel. And immediately he thought, oh my God, I just sent one of my own men to death. And about another 30 seconds later, his soldier came crawling back out, dragging a member of the Viet Cong who was in the tunnel. And they were relatively short people. And he said the guy looked like he was probably about 15 years old. He was actually a full-grown adult, but just they were relatively short. And but he had been in a tunnel. He was wet. He was scared, and he just looked like he was about to collapse. He was so frightened by the whole experience. And my dad picked him up. He obviously had been injured. He was shot in the leg. And my dad picked him up and carried him over to the helicopter, and they were going to take him back and debrief him. But he could tell the way my dad was treating him that he was going to be okay, and he was going to receive treatment. And I think out of shock and graciousness and everything, this enemy, as my dad got him up onto the helicopter, reached over and hugged my father for that treatment. And that was a story that a gesture that he just could not forget, just because it was so unexpected. And I think it's also a reflection of how he treated other people. Even the enemy was willing to embrace him. And so I think he's so grateful for everyone he served with, and he appreciates all the gestures of kindness and love that he received.
Well, thank you for having this opportunity to say something about a very special man, my father-in-law, Don Munson. He's been such an important part of our family, and we feel so blessed that we've been able to spend so much time and quality time with him over the years. In particular, we've enjoyed the vacations that he's taken us on. We've gone to places that we never would have gone to if it weren't for him. We've experienced things that he was able to really explain about the history and the culture of so many different places. And, we always learn things when we're with Don. He's always a teacher. I'm especially appreciative of that, with everything that he's taught to my daughters, Megan and Erin. He is just a man who has lived life to its fullest, and I could never fully capture, the essence of Don, or as we call him, Double D, which we're not sure what it stands for. We thought it was my daddy's daddy, but then he said it was Don from Dallas, and then somewhere along the way it became Donald Duck, so I'm not really sure, but Double D stuck, and that's what we call him, and he will always be a very special man who we will miss immensely.
My Uncle Don was an incredible man. I'm sure beyond just his military valor and some of the stories that, countless people who knew him would have enjoyed hearing from him. One thing that stood out to me the most about my Uncle Don was just how much of a sense of community that he had within Dallas. And being new to Dallas myself over the last 2 years, I was able to reconnect with him and spend more time with him than I had for most of my childhood, being in a different state. And over the last several months, I really loved seeing that it could be anywhere from a Chick-fil-A to a Red Lobster to an MOWW meeting. It seemed like everywhere we went, he already knew the people there, and they would warmly, greet him and be excited to see him, know him by name. And I think that really impressed me and kind of stood out as, a characteristic that he was able to just build relationships with anyone that, were long-lasting and genuine. And so I think, a lot of people will remember him for, all the wonderful things that he did serving our nation. And I think it's really important also to remember just how big of an impact he had, on his community and establishing, those relationships with people who needed him around him.
My name is Christina Brown. Don Munson was my technically father-in-law, although we didn't really do the whole in-law thing. So I have known Dad for 16 years. And I would like to share one of my favorite stories that he always shared with me. Now, I apologize to all the military folks. I'm probably using the wrong terminology, but favorite story is he was in, I believe, some special forces training, and he and a small group of other men were out in the middle of the jungle, as far as I know, and they had to do cooking. Now, you have to understand that Dad's favorite thing was, let's go out to a restaurant nowadays, but so they had to rough it. And so Dad was in charge of the potatoes. His partner in crime was in charge of the chicken, and the intent was to have roast chicken and potatoes. And so Dad's peeling the potatoes. His partner has gone off into the woods to get the chicken. About 20 minutes later, partner comes back. No chicken. Dad's like, where's the chicken? Now, the man is completely covered in scratches all the way up his arms. And he's here like, well, I tried to drown the chicken. It didn't work so good. So they ended up having potato soup that night for dinner. Wasn't quite as tasty without the chicken. So it was apparently very bland. So that is my favorite story that he ever told. Now, he always did a much, much better job of it because he was a fantastic storyteller. So any stories that he told you, remember them well and share them far and wide. And that is how we can keep his legacy going. Love you, Dad. Stay out of trouble. Mom, I'm sure you were waiting for him up at the gates. And I hope you two have a fantastic time